Greetings, I am Leslie Grace Streeter.
And I'm Lynne Streeter Childress.
And we are identical twins, writers. Lynn's an actor. I'm a journalist. We are fun, half runners, vegetarianish, Black middle-aged moms about town. And we are here for
TwinSight with Leslie and Lynne.
Woo-hoo! It's a pop culture podcast because a lot like you don't have enough of those. But this one is about the idea of redemption arcs. And I actually said the word arc right this time in television and movies, because both of us have had through our lives a bit of reinvention and seen in real life, how great it is when you can redeem and reinvent yourself. And we thought, why not apply that to movies since we were watching them anyway?
Correct.
Excellent.
We talked a lot. The original title of this was going to be, since we were talking anyway, because we talk several times a day, sometimes about things that are going on in our lives, but often about things that we're watching and how that adds to the world and philosophy, and we think it's important. But then we post things and we realize that other people think sort of the same thing. So we decided let's do this for real. So like Leslie said, we are going to be discussing things that have either a redemption or reinvention arc.
Which could also include makeovers, which are dumb, but we'll talk about that.
Correct. Yeah. Correct. And so let me show you our logo that I made. Okay, let me see if it will happen. Oh, so also to let you know that we are both moms of little boys. And if you hear people asking us to do things, it's because home and little boys.
Yes.
Yes.
Excellent. Show the logo. This is how official we are. We have a logo. What?
It's exciting.
I love it so much. Okay, so we are going to have our first guest on our first official podcast, and it's because we couldn't figure out what to call this thing. So we opened it up to a vote because, crowdsourcing is the word, much like Greece. And so we had a contest, which cost us nothing.
And we actually at first kept coming up with great ideas, but because we're 50, we're not making fun of memory loss at all, but we kept forgetting and not writing down.
Girl, that is a good idea. What was it, girl?
And then honestly, we kept forgetting what it was we had said we were going to name it.
And half the ones we had someone else had already come up with them first. Right. So we had
at least, right. We had a contest. We asked people and we got some great ideas. And several of them came from the person who supplied the winning idea, who is Leslie.
Julia Duresky, one of my best friends and a Palm Beach society photographer. We're letting her in now, and she'll explain to you how this has changed her life. It really hasn't.
Hi, Julia.
Hey, twinsies.
Hello. Okay, so we were explaining that you're going to explain how winning this contest changed your life. No, it did not.
Completely. I felt unseen, and it just gave me a voice to be heard and to contribute with my favorite people's creativity and growth. It means so much to me.
Middle-aged women sitting at home changing lives.
I love it. That is hilarious. And I think you really had amazing ideas. And I'm so happy that you did this. There was another one that we almost did, but
TwinSight, which is why I'm wearing this shirt.
Yes.
You notice there was a theme here, and I'm covering it up so nobody tries to sue me for the logo. Because come on,
JC, be on our show. Don't sue us, but be on our show.
Be on our show, JC. And what's that commercial? The 3/5 of NSYNC with Flo. It's like Flo on the Progressive commercial. It's like, isn't something supposed to wacky be happening now? They go, no, we're not going to do anything crazy in this commercial. And they open the door, and it's Joey Fatone and Lance Bass and Chris Kilpatrick. And they go, it's not the time, 3/5 of NSYNC.
That I've never seen it, and I need to find it.
It's very funny. Anyway, so today's movie that we're going to talk about, it's funny because we just came up with it because we hate this movie. Well, I do, but I watched it 15 times and we talk about it all the time. And it happens to be the 15th anniversary of the release of The Devil Wears Prada. And it just so happens that Julia, I probably one of the 15 times I've seen this movie, it was probably at my house, like sitting on the floor eating Indian food and drinking something. But Julia, being a fashion photographer, well, she's everything photographer of people and things and products and fabulous and parties and whatever, understands very much the world, the kind of world that and the people that are involved in this. So what we're going to do is every week we're going to tell you what the movie is or the TV show is, what it's about, who it is that is supposed to be reinvented or redeemed or whatever, and then we're going to talk about whether that worked or not, and also we're going to talk about how much the friends of the girl in this movie sucked. That's most of my thesis, honestly. It's just if we can just bag on Andy's friends for like a solid freaking hour. Boyfriend sucks. Anyway, so Lynn, tell us about this movie. What's it about?
So it's about this young woman named Andrea who has just graduated from Northwestern.
Yes.
And
she won't shut up about it.
Right. And she is living in New York, has dreams of being a journalist, has written
very important journalist. And I'm going to say, as a features journalist, I had my backup about this anyway, because I write about things like fashion and television and stuff. So anyone who goes, that's not real, I have to write about the bean strike or whatever. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's very important. But also take a load off and eat something and read about what happened there. So she already had an attitude and I wasn't into it.
So she then gets, she wants to be a journalist, and the only thing that she can get is an interview at a big corporation, publishing companies,
like Condé Nast or that kind of thing.
Right. They own several imprints, and this is the one that she could get. But she does no research. She doesn't even know who she's talking to, and she has no respect for the thing that she's interviewing. So she gets hired anyway because the boss, Miranda Priestley, who is the devil in the title,
and played by Meryl Streep.
Yes, she gets hired anyway because Miranda Priestley thinks that she's intelligent and she's different than the people who are usually there, kind of like frothing at the mouth, really wanting to be hired. Mm-hmm. And so she goes in a different direction, which also you can say, but you're hiring somebody who has disdain for what you do. But that's a whole other thing.
And so, yes.
So she gets hired thinking that she is going to just kind of skate through this, but still be herself, wearing sweaters and socks and tights or whatever.
And not brushing her hair. I mean, come on, man. It just, she didn't even try. So
right.
Basically the gist is, and there will be spoilers, by the way, we have assumed, we should have said this at the outset, every time we're talking about a movie, we are going to talk about everything that happens in the movie, including the end. So if you have not seen this 15-year-old movie, log off now, go watch it, and then come back. But don't be mad at us. We're discussing the arc of characters in a 15-year-old movie based on a book that's even older. We love you, but work with us.
Come back later.
Come back later.
So I don't know how far you want me to go, but she basically
that's basically what it's about. So
right.
Andrea is the character who is supposed to be, what do you think it set out for her redemption arc to be? Like, what does the movie think that her arc is?
Well, I mean, I guess it's that she sets out to kind of not be changed, and she gets changed because to keep her job, she winds up first externally caring about how she looks or trying to look a certain way to fit in and be taken seriously. But then all that starts to seep into her soul, and she is, or isn't she, but that's a whole nother conversation. She at least is caring more and more about these things and less about the things she's supposed to care about, like her friends and her boyfriend. But that's a whole nother conversation, and boundaries. We'll talk about that in it, but work
Yes.
and what that looks like in anything that you're in. But I think she starts to change and does some things that she thought she would never do, and some things that she does that
What,
she
like
doesn't.
brush her hair and wear like a matching pattern?
No, I mean like sell people out. That she thinks she
But
would
did
never.
she though? We'll talk about that too.
Well, that's a whole nother thing. But the movie wants you to think that she did, and then she at the end kind of decides, once things really blow up more than they've already blown up, she sees the side of her boss that she's already seen, but sees more, and decides that if I need to be in this and do these things, I can't do this. And she leaves in Paris. She's in Paris at a fashion show. And I keep thinking though, well, she left. I guess she had a return ticket.
Girl, I could not stop thinking about that. I'm like, because most people, you left, there's people I've worked for that if you left them in the middle of a trip, that ticket will be canceled by the time you got there. It's like, I hope you
For every expense that got paid for.
That's right. And I kept thinking that so she went back to the hotel,
quit,
in the car that they paid for,
threw away the phone that they gave her into the fountain.
Not gracefully. This is not how you leave a job. You do not
leave well.
Gracefully for someone who's given you so much. She's still wearing the expensive dress. She's still profiting from all of these connections. She's still getting everything that she wanted from the job and completely screws her boss over. You would never, ever get out from that unscathed, nor get a kind recommendation, which she ends up getting to another job because her boss does give her a glowing and a review that does get her her next job. That would never abandon.
And so to me, and this is, spoiling the end of the thing, but I will say that honestly, and we'll talk about why, but I don't think the redemption worked because I don't think she learned anything. I think that she started at one thing. She said, I'm going to use this position without doing anything to get what I want. She changed to the point where she didn't decide that she was right all along. And then she still got what she wanted. She still got what she wanted. And so to me, there's no growth there. I mean, ostensibly because, first of all, let's be honest, this is a very badly written movie. The book was worse. I mean, I would say I love this movie because I love the fashion. I love fashion.
Me
love
too.
Mismatched earrings and my kimono over my NSYNC shirt. You can tell fashion. But I love fashion. I love the soundtrack was amazing. Every single scene was choreographed beautifully. The casting was great. The acting was great. But everything that happened in the movie, let me break it down for you. I think that for there to be a true redemption arc or true, like, what have I learned? How have I changed? How have I grown as a person? There has to be either something that you gave up that was worth something. And I will posit that the things that she gave up, at least temporarily, were not really worth all that much, i.e. the people in her life. This was a movie that was about, like, they're all like, all of her friends are in the early 20s and they all are doing highly demanding things. I think she has one friend that's in like vaguely in finance or something, one friend who's an artist, the boyfriend is a chef, she now is in publishing. None of these jobs
He's not a chef, he's a
sous chef
on the line. He works on the line.
He wants to be a chef. So none of these people have jobs where it's 9 to 5. None of these people have jobs where you could just easily, if you wanted to, leave and do a thing or whatever. Everyone's got a demanding job. And there's a moment, and I talked about the scene with both of you at length. There's a scene in the movie where, so Andrea has come to this thing, and at first she's like, stubbornly, she doesn't just come and say, I don't want to change who I am. She comes into a place where, like Lynn said, she doesn't even know the name of the woman, the name of the publisher, of the editor of this important magazine, where I can't think of one person who wouldn't have sent you out the door immediately. You would never get hired at a place where you hadn't even bothered to, because she's not just, the movie wants you to think that she's this woman who's super, she's got convictions and she's come in there with all of her things are about, like, farmer strikes and, wheat or whatever it is, and she's really earnest.
You say meat?
I said wheat, sweetie, wheat.
Oh, I thought you said meat.
We'll also accept meat or wheat. Anyway, it's very self-serious. So she comes in and she does everything that those of us now in our 40s and 50 now understand that will get you happily disqualified from a job, like not knowing who you're talking to. She doesn't come in just saying, I think I look nice. She comes in going, I refuse. You are beneath me. So I stubbornly refuse to change even a little bit, because if she was going into another job that had a uniform that she respected, she would wear it. If she walked into a place that she respected and she was working with like farm workers and they said, hey, listen, please don't wear flashy jewelry or wear things that you can walk in the fields in, she would say, great, I'm going to wear comfortable shoes, going to do whatever. She walks into these thing with these runway girls, as she calls them, the same of the hotel, of the magazine, people that she thinks are beneath her, and she digs in and says, I refuse to the point where there's a part of the movie where they're having a meeting or they're trying to pick accessories to go with an outfit for a shoot. And Meryl Streep's character says, well, I don't know what to do with these two things. They're so different. And she snorts. She snorts audibly in a place where she's already on thin ice, because she thinks it's stupid to talk about why these two blues and the one we know it's called cerulean, is different. And Meryl Streep talks about why this thing came to be this color. And it starts here. These people in this room make these decisions, and this happens, and it winds up in some casual corner knockoff bin where you found it. And I was like, because first of all, casual corner knockoff bins had some really great stuff in them. But the point that she was making is, she goes, you're laughing because you think this has nothing to do with you. And go ahead, Lynn. I see your face.
Well, honestly, what was interesting in that scene was, because I watched it again yesterday, is that I thought at first that she was gonna say, oh, I was laughing because I thought you were joking. But it was really, like you laugh and you think everyone's gonna laugh because you think that it's been made.
It's a joke, yeah.
But she doubled down. Well, they look just alike. It was so flames on the left side of my face. Right. It was very infuriating, sort of the entitlement, because Leslie and I talked about this. We've all worked in offices, and we've all been the new person in an office where you are trying to figure out what the culture is. And I know that I worked in offices, an actor, and I then either temped or then had longer jobs in offices kind of until I was, gonna get something else, but really was working there and not with both eyes on the door. But it took me a while to kind of figure out what the culture was, I didn't have the money to buy suits or to do this or that. So I got that, but I was very intent on making sure that I was going to be seen as competent.
Yes.
And sometimes you're afraid to speak. When I had anxiety, I used to temp. I had anxiety when the phone rang and she didn't know sort of what to say or how to get the call through or what to write down or she didn't even have she's looking for things to write down with, right?
She had no pad, she had nothing. She was unprepared. She came into a place thinking that she was smarter than everybody else. I think, and maybe when we do this again, we'll talk about this and establish it. To me, the only thing that makes a credible redemption arc in any literature or any movie or TV show is that the character has to be defined in the beginning enough that it makes a difference through the movie or the TV show or whatever, or the plot, that there is some perceptible change. She is so thinly defined as earnest college girl trying to make a difference that she kind of is so passive through this whole thing. Things happen. She keeps saying, I didn't have a choice. And she gets dinged on it a couple times. I screwed this person over. I didn't have a choice. I didn't go to this birthday party. I didn't have a choice. Right. I completely disregarded the instructions I was given to drop off a book in my employer's home and leave without talking to anyone. And I did it anyway because I'm an idiot, and that should have gotten her fired.
So the big underlying thing for me why she doesn't get redeemed, and for me, this is start to finish, and it touches on every single point that both of you are making. Disrespect. Blatant disrespect for the job, her boss, the industry she's working for.
Yeah.
The people who influence and have created the industry that she's working for, the people that have come before her. Like you said, she continually has disrespect for her boss, in the home, with her private life, and then disrespect for her friends, for her boyfriend. And what especially does not make her redeeming is her respecting herself enough to stand either for or against or choose anything.
To choose anything, Julia, to make any actual decision that they, and I guess when they write these things, it was based on a book that was very vaguely, very thinly fiction, that was really based on the original writer's experiences working for Anna Wintour at Vogue, even though she never said it was. We knew that that's who it was about. Yeah. And it was a very badly written book, honestly. But
anyone who knows anything about fashion knows it's exactly
that's what it was. So it was a very badly written book. So the movie was slightly better written, but as Julia and I were saying yesterday when I asked her, when I talked to her about doing this, that everything in the movie that happened, it would have taken 2 or 3 extra lines to make it actually makes sense. Like, for instance, people who haven't seen this movie, I talked about her friends. Her friends are all these people starting out, like I said, these demanding jobs. And they have this scene, this inexplicable scene where I can't imagine you watched it back while you're filming the movie and went, this is stupid, we should change it. Where they're having happy hour and she's running late, I think, and she comes in, and this is the first of many things she'll be late or no show to because she's working. But nobody that starts out in their 20s expects all of their friends to come to their birthday parties because they know that you're working. That's the time where you don't. I missed weddings. I missed like retirement things and stuff. And there was no Zoom. There were no camera phones. There was, I'm sorry I missed your thing, Judy. Had to work. And your friends your age. No.
Right. I'm an actor and I was on the road and missed things. I missed weddings. The first union show I got at the Kennedy Center, I was supposed to be in a wedding months later. And I said, oh, can I get my understudy do it? And they're like, no. Now, knowing what I know now, I would have done it, accepted it, and then had the understudy do it. But I didn't know that. I thought, I don't want to lose this job. So I was not in my friend's wedding because I had a show, and that stuff stinks. And it wasn't great, but people understand that people is what that is. People understand that is the name of the game when you're trying to establish yourself.
Go ahead.
It's continue in your job because you respect it and because you respect what you do. So I've been doing my job for 18 years. I have never had a New Year's Eve off. I rarely have a Valentine's Day off because of the Heart Gala. I work through Thanksgivings and Christmases. I end up celebrating my own birthday on random days because I work and I love and respect my job, but I don't flake on people. I make it very well known. My family, my loved ones, my best friends know I will show up for, a little high at midnight because, I have to work all night and whatnot, and it just doesn't happen. But you communicate to those you love and and you respect, and you let them know, and you understand your job and its requirements, and that both boundaries, both according to your job and according to your friends, and you communicate clearly and let everyone know this is who I am, this is where I'm at, and
and she tries to do that.
Any of that on any front.
No. And the thing about the friends is that, as you said, Julie, she is loath to actually make decisions or stands or any sort of like autonomous showing in any part of her life, except for she just she kind of flops around and does it. So there's a scene where like she comes and she says, I'm so sorry I'm late or whatever, but she says, I have goodies. So she opens her bag and she's giving out, because I worked in newspapers for years. So people would send stuff and I would say, hey, I don't want this book. You can have it. Hey, I don't want this like commemorative clock of a movie you've never seen.
T-shirt, whatever. Right?
T-shirt, whatever. So you give things away. So she comes in, but her stuff is good. So she's handing out Clinique and she's handing out like a $3,000 Marc Jacobs bag and like a fancy phone and whatever. And she's giving, and her friends are suddenly now very interested in what she's doing. And like, gimme, pretty. Okay, so in that moment, they seem to be on board. Like, we get it, you get perks, we get perks, whatever. But in the very same scene, at one point she says, well, I kind of we're getting to understand what they do. And the same friend, the guy who has just accepted this expensive phone, rolls his eyes. It's like, give me my phone back. So that doesn't happen. So her boss, this will never make any sense to me. I will never understand who wrote this and what they were smoking at the time. Her boss calls her. She has two phones, her own cell phone and the phone that's for work. And it's got that Nokia do. I think that was the Nokia.
I can't remember. Yeah.
Anyway, so the phone rings and her friends who have just accepted literally thousands of dollars worth of free gifts think it's funny to play keep away with her phone. And they won't give her phone. It's work. And they think they go from, we think you work too much, to, well, we're going to put you in a position where you could get fired. We're going to put you in a position where you look unprofessional and stop you from working. And we think it's funny and cute. And like I said to Lynn, every single one of those people, if the gallery had called the Tracy Thoms character and said, hey, listen, the sprinklers came on and ruined the thing, you have to come and help us, slough off, the water, she'd have to go, and she'd be mad if they took her phone. Her friend who's in finance, hey, the stock market crashed, you have to come. Her boyfriend, hey, the mayor's in town and now we have an extra six top and we need you to come in and make more port wine reductions or whatever it is he said he did. Any one of those people, because they valued what they did for a living, would have been irate if she had done that. But they had just said they valued what she could do for them. So that's why the scene made no sense. Go ahead.
Well, what's also interesting though, is that you were talking about the respect, her not respecting herself, Julia, is that, but at the beginning, that was one of the problems, is that none of them respected her job. Her friends didn't respect her job and she didn't respect her job. They were all equally decided that they were already over this and they were already but when she started to understand, that's when it was like, what do you mean we can't make fun of the same stuff that you're making fun of anymore? Because she decided that she was up there now on a different level of understanding than them. And they were kind of like, how dare you? Here's another thing that I don't understand. Again, about things being thinly drawn. How did your friend have a gallery and a gallery opening? I don't understand. No one ever explained. Are you all the same age? Are you up in? You're at an office. Do you work at this gallery? Why do you have a showing? How do you?
I kind of felt like she worked at the gallery, and that was one thing, and they don't explain it. I always felt like she worked at the gallery, and then they gave her own show, and this was her first big thing. Okay. Once again, a job, as you know, because all of us are artists. That's not a 9-to-5 job. That's not a job. There's no one who's ever had a gallery opening who was able to make everybody's birthday. There's no one who ever had a gallery opening or was in a play or wrote a book or shot, a wedding, who was then able to do everything in their life that was important to them. So the fact that the people that wrote this movie were all professionals. They weren't like 22-year-old girls, sitting in the thing. These were all the people making the movie, that no one ever said, this doesn't make any sense. And maybe we could write in a line where, like, her friend says, you know what, Andy, I don't like who you've become. I'm going to give you my bag. There's a point, like said, where she's talking to a guy, spoiler alert, she and the boyfriend, who's stupid, are having problems. And she is talking to this guy who's flirting with her, who she's met through the fashion world, who's hot because he's played by Simon Baker. And he kisses her on the cheek. and her friend sees it, and she's actually at the show. That's the thing that's crazy. She didn't miss the show. Nate couldn't come to the show, but she was at the show. She was there at the show, and she's mad at her because Rip told her she was supposed to be. And then
not only was she at the show, I'm sorry, is that he had just propositioned her and she said no.
She said no. So
her wonder her.
And her friend sees him kiss her on the cheek and acts like she's like, making out with them against the buffet, and says, this is the thing. They say all these things in this movie because they want you to believe that there's a lot of redeeming and changing going on, but they don't show you. There is no part in this movie where she willingly says, you're not important to me anymore. I'm doing this. There was never a moment there's a moment like it's her boyfriend's birthday and they make her go to this fancy thing and she's hanging out with people. And the guy asks her, the guy who's flirting with her says, hey, do you want to go get a drink? I want to introduce you to my editor at the New Yorker. And she actually has the choice to blow her boyfriend off further and decides not to. Because everything in the movie, she's making excuses. She's trying. She's giving mea culpas. There's never one point in the movie until they break up that she does anything where she says, I have changed, other than her hair, other than that she now has a demanding job they don't approve of. The only thing she changed was that she wasn't the person they thought she was in terms of she was going to always be nice and whatever. And also, I always thought they were jealous of her because they all had jobs. Like her artist friend was really cute and whatever, and was in this world where you have to look a certain way. And her friend who worked in Wall Street or whatever wore a nice suit.
Wearing suits.
There was nothing wrong with him doing it, but she was supposed to be the dowdy friend. And when she wasn't the dowdy friend anymore, they didn't like it. So the change, when they say you change, it's like, oh, now we have to be nice to you. Now we have to think about maybe how we treated you before. We expected you to stay in this box. But there was never a moment when she says that at the end of the movie, when she's talking to the boyfriend, who's now her ex-boyfriend, and she says, you were right about everything. And I'm screaming at the television, about what? What was he right about? Like I said, if you're gonna do that movie, if you're gonna do that, she was here, then she became a bad person, then she redeemed herself, there has to be a moment where she's actually a bad person. There has to be a moment where her badness is actually something that she did, besides being bad at her job, which didn't affect any of them, or being, also, Julie, let me ask about the scene. Okay, so there's a scene where there's a friend, a girl who starts her as her enemy and becomes her friend, named Emily, who is the first assistant, who had been the second assistant, but she got promoted and they needed to replace, she was hiring someone to replace herself. So she played by Emily Blunt, who's perfect, just perfect. Carries off green eyeshadow, it's amazing. So there's a point where she has made it clear, one of the only consistent themes in the movie is that Emily is starving herself, almost so much fat shaming in this movie, so much fat shaming and clear eating disorders in this movie, but she's starving herself. She eats a cube of cheese if she's about to pass out. That's it. She's trying to starve herself so she can fit into sample sizes in Paris, on this Paris trip to go. Paris. Now we know, of course, because we've seen a movie before, something is going to happen and Emily will not be able to go to Paris. And Andy will. And the movie treats it as if she was standing behind Emily's desk with a hockey stick trying to break her ankle so she couldn't go. They treat it like she has betrayed her in some horrible way because Miranda basically says if you don't go on, she can't go because she's sick. She's forgetting things. She's not presenting well. She can't go. No, it was mean. She had to tell her. You got to tell her. That was mean. But the point was Emily wasn't going to be able to go. And everyone treated her like she had tied her to the railroad tracks. What do you think about that?
She stepped up. She was forced. So here again is another point where she's put into a situation. She doesn't own it. She doesn't take responsibility. So again, a huge thing with this movie is disrespect and irresponsibility. And a big reason why the redeeming arc doesn't happen is she never takes personal responsibility for the choices she's making. She constantly blames them on someone else. She should not be blamed for stepping up and doing what the job needed. And she's not responsible for what Emily should have done, but still at no point does she own what is happening. She
Never.
doesn't take personal responsibility about it. She's like, oh, but I didn't do it. It's not my fault. It's not my fault.
I always wonder what the movie, if she had done, or the book, if she had done things the right way, the kind way, would have had her do. Would they have had her say, because basically Miranda said, if you don't go to Paris instead of Emily, and if you don't go tell her, it's going to be hard for you to get a job in public here at all. ... Because I'm going to badmouth you and make it impossible for you to get a job.
Yeah.
My question was, did the movie think that at that point she should have said, do you know what? I'm sorry, this is the bridge too far. I can't do this. And what?
My entire career is possibly in this city where I moved to become a journalist. My entire career is now gonna be in the balance because I didn't go to Paris.
Right. And here's the thing, I'm not saying that she shouldn't have, because she makes a decision in Paris.
Mm-hmm.
Miranda, so there's a Miranda's, what was his name? Stanley Tucci's character, who was like her right hand, was supposed to be leaving her to get a job as the head of this company, of this designer. Daniel, I love him, that actor. But anyway, he was supposed to be working with him, but Miranda, in a bid to keep her job, basically said, instead of you guy hiring this woman that's going to replace me, Jacqueline, why don't you instead, somebody else offer her another job that looks as good as this so I can keep my job? And she doesn't tell her friend, and she screws him over. That's when Andy says, this is too far, this is too awful. And then she walks away. But she had
still potentially risking her job. Still potentially risking her job.
Exactly. But
her future job.
It gets that at that point. So my question is, we all had jobs. We just talked a little bit of it. Not that when we were asked to do things that were morally bad, but we've all made decisions that affected us personally and the people around us to keep our jobs. And then at some point said, this ain't worth it anymore, right? We've all gotten to those points in jobs. Again, even if it wasn't somebody trying to get you to do something, but I was talking about this morning, I had a job that I loved, but I wasn't being paid enough. And I asked for a raise. Somebody else offered me a job closer to my house. I wound up getting a raise from the people I was working for, but in the end decided it still wasn't worth it, because I was going to be spending as much money commuting as I was now working 15 minutes from my house, where I didn't have to pay for parking. And I don't know, all that to say, it was very interesting of I think, what is the message of this movie, and what are they saying she could have done or should have done?
Well, let me say something, and I want to ask Julia how she feels about this. Lynn had referenced the scene where basically Miranda, who had been like the person in fashion for a long time, she's getting older, there's some things going on in her personal life, whatever, and she understands that they're trying to replace her with this younger French woman, Jacqueline. And this has been her life. She has dedicated her life to this magazine. Once again, not a nice person. It's not about that. She has made billions of dollars for many, many, many people. And now they find her less useful, so they're going to get rid of her. So there's this moment, like I said, where she has to decide, am I going to be pushed out gently into the pasture, or I'm going to try to save my job? So there's a moment, yes, where she doesn't tell Stanley Tucci's character, I don't think she could have, honestly, that she is going to try to get Jacqueline put into the job that he is supposed to have, so she can keep her job, because she comes to them with a list of every designer and model and writer and photographer at all that has worked with her for runway, who she feels like they owe her a favor. And they've all signed this paper that says, if you fire her, we will never work for runway again. So they have no choice. Now, watching this movie at 35, I remember thinking, I know they're presenting this to kids who are their 20s, who've never had a job, who think that this is a horrible thing that she's doing. But even at 35, I got it. And now at 50, I applaud that as a baller move. To be nice, she's supposed to let her entire career go. It says a lot about, because the scene where she's explaining this to Andy is the one scene where she's announced she doesn't have any makeup on. No, before that, it's a scene before that. You see her when her husband has decided that, she's getting divorced. So you've seen her vulnerable. So then when she explains to Andy, listen, I already knew about it, and this is what happened. And you see in the background the previous thing happening with them handing out the list, giving them the list and the whole thing. I'm watching that going, because what else would you do? You would use every weapon in your arsenal to keep your job. So, I mean, did you think that was a horrible betrayal, Julia? Did you think that that was just good business?
Absolutely not. It's incredible business. We all, and my company especially, have faced different people coming in, other companies, other individuals, other photographers coming into our realm. My company's been on Palm Beach for 45 years. We have extreme loyalty with a lot of clients. There's been a lot of people who have come in who have tried to take away some clientele, who both of my bosses, Lucian, who's passed, and Carrie, my current boss, have had a great mentality about it of let them go for a minute. They'll realize where the value is, where the product is. We don't work out of our trunks. We offer you everything, soup to nuts. And Miranda's basically saying that I offer all of this and you cannot get it anywhere else. Nothing betrayal about that, about saying, this is what I bring to the table. This is what you'll lose. You cannot get this product, this service, this dedication, this experience anywhere else.
I didn't find that a betrayal. I thought that was a baller move. I think if she had time to get that list together, she had time to tell Stanley Gigi.
But she couldn't tell him, because what if he messed it up? What if he messed it up?
But he wouldn't have. Hold on. And this is one of the points where I have to ask my child what he wants. Yes, child. Did you knock on the door? Okay, I can't talk. I'll be with you soon. Okay, well then I can't help you. So you need to hold on, okay? Thanks, baby. I love you.
Okay. So
okay.
At the end,
thank God for post-edit.
Yeah, exactly. All I'm saying is because remember she said, he goes, well, it's okay. She'll make it up to me.
Yeah.
And she'll make it right. And Andy's like, but will she?
He's like, nah.
But so again, if somebody who you call your friend and your dear friend, she could have not embarrassed him and sold him out.
Sure. Absolutely.
And so that was, to me, she was doing everything that she could to save herself. She could have said, because that's happened in the movie, they go, we have to tell you, you're not going to be the one to do the whatever, but just suck it up, okay? I mean, I don't know.
But no, and here's the thing, that to
like
me, that part was the moment where you go, okay, she's full-blooded. Because there were petty things. Like at one point we talked about how Andy is supposed to bring, there's the book, which is like, what they're doing the next day, to the house. And she entrusts her in a nod of confidence to be the one to bring it to her house. And also she's saying, as an employer, where you're saying, employee, I'm allowing you to have keys to my home, to go into my home where my children live and where I live, and I'm not home yet, and leave something, the vote of confidence that is. But she's told, you leave it downstairs, you don't talk to the kids, you don't talk to anybody, you don't go upstairs, you just leave the thing, you lock the door back and you leave. And so this idiot comes in and lets these teenage girls who are giggling and obviously like the Siamese cats and Lady and the Tramp, trying desperately to get her into trouble because it's funny.
They're not teens, they're younger than that.
They're like 11 or 12. They're tweens. They're old enough to be evil is what I'm saying. They're like 12, and they're like, So they decide they're going to mess with this girl, and she's stupid enough to do it. Like I said, I would have fired her immediately. And the fact that the movie believes that that was just a whoopsie, and that this professional person who has been entrusted with the home, the keys and the entry to the home of this woman that she works for, that anything less than being been doing what you were told is acceptable. I was like, who is this for? Who is this for? But entitled people who think that they're supposed to get 87 chances in a job they didn't want in the first place. And so the punishment is that she says, well, my daughters are leaving on the train to see their grandmother tomorrow, and they want the unpublished manuscript of the next Harry Potter, and you have to find it or I'll fire you. Don't even come in
4 hours.
In 4 hours. And
Bound.
And yes, that was a mean, awful thing. She should have just fired her. She should have said, you know what, this ain't gonna work. So she has to try to humiliate her on the way out, and she's visibly annoyed that she actually gets it done, because she calls the Simon Baker character who worked at the New Yorker, and he gets her someone who can get it. Although I said to Lynn, honestly, except for the time limit, I didn't think that was that huge of an ask, because working in publishing and stuff and knowing how much a name can open a door, as long as you called from the Runway offices and they saw Runway on the phone and you said, I'm Miranda Priestley's assistant, and anyone could have called back and verified that you were her assistant and said, she needs a big ask. We know this manuscript exists. Can you get it bound for us in an hour? They would have tried to get it done. I didn't see like that was the most impossible thing to do, if you were, because like since she had that list at the end of authors and writers and stuff, there's certainly a person at the publishing company who's expecting Runway to feature their next book in their pages. Yeah. Or there's a writer there who has an essay there in the next couple of months. That's a career move, saying, hey, it would be helpful if you could help me, because nobody does anything until there's a back being scratched, So yeah, so to wrap up, let's say this. We've already decided that the redemption arc didn't happen because the person never really seemed to be redeemed. So how does that, at the end, when she's doing this triumphant sort of like, she sees Miranda after she's quit and she's given her the good review and she knows she's going to get the job, and there's this sort of meaningful moment where they kind of see each other. Does that work for you, knowing that does that work without the rest of the movie working?
What do you mean?
That moment is the kind of moment that happens in a movie where this thing has happened and this arc has been successful. So the two people, like I always left at the end of the Pelican Brief because it was 1994 and Black people, white people weren't allowed to kiss in movies apparently at that point, randomly, unless the movie was about that. So Denzel Washington and Julia Roberts' characters who wind up together, or at least have a sexual relationship in the book, just hug really meaningfully. It's just they hug, right? But they've earned that hug. You've watched that movie, seeing these actors and the writing support the emotion of that moment, even if it was silly that it wasn't more. Do you know what I'm saying? There was a moment because those characters had earned that closeness. You saw these characters and the writing provided a setting for them to get close. So at the end, when they have their big meaningful goodbye, it makes sense. To me, The Devil Wears Prada didn't make sense because the whole thing fell apart to me.
So in the Pelican Brief, you saw them grow.
Yes.
And that's what this movie lacked, was that you did not see growth come to the other side. Like you said, she did not earn this next job. Yeah. She did not respect her current job. She did not leave correctly. She did not grow and learn from that. She left with the same disrespect that she arrived on. Did she learn more about industry and respect the industry a little bit more? Yes, but she left her boss and the job with the same disrespect that she walked in the door with. And that is unredeeming. And so that does not earn her character the next job. She did not earn. Miranda grew a little, I think, in the movie.
I think she did.
It was a great ending scene, but they did not earn the viewer's respect. It was an excellent it wasn't excellently written and shot scene, and it was a good way to end the movie.
Beautiful. It was beautiful.
But they do not earn the respect of the viewer. Neither of them genuinely is transformed or has learned a lesson. And that definitely bothered me, that Andy's character, or the character of Andy, does not come out in a more developed way. She's still leaving the job with complete disrespect for the job at the industry.
Yeah. Lynn.
This is why it actually makes sense to me.
Okay.
I think that Miranda saw that Andy had the capability to be as horrible as she was. and that, I mean, seriously, it was like she saw this young woman go through all of this to keep the job. And also, though, and they didn't go way into it. And I guess there was a scene in my mind that wasn't really in the movie where this was, well, no, she did say that. She did say this, that she saw herself in her.
Yes, she did.
Like, I don't see you and me at all. You're horrible, whatever. And that whole scene. But I think because, unfortunately, because there was something that she was, not fortunately for her, she hired her in the first place because she thought she was different, because she had a background that the other people who didn't work for her had. And there was some gravitas in that. Not the same thing, but my first job after college was working at Payless Shoe Source. And I had a bachelor's degree, and my boss, I had done some retail, but I wasn't qualified in that way, but I was overqualified in terms of, I had a psych degree. Mm-hmm. And my boss knew that the first thing I got, I was probably going to leave, but he hired me because he thought I was interesting. And we're still friends. We still talk on Facebook. Yeah. Almost 30 years later, but he thought that I was interesting. And he became one of my closest friends at that point, because he thought, this is somebody, at least we can have funny conversations standing at the counter, or unpacking shoes in the back. So all that to say, she hired her knowing that she did not have the same drive as an Emily or the other people, that same kind of snarkiness. But she hired her because she knew that she would figure it out. And I think once she got there and saw what she became, there was, I guess you were supposed to think there was at least some kind of begrudging respect for her. And that's why, and that smile at the end of she's doing something different, she would not have cut Emily that slack. No. Because she didn't respect Emily. And I think there was something she could think that, I don't know, you're right with her leaving her in the lurch like that. But I also think that scene where she has no makeup on and she tells her that she's getting divorced, you're supposed to somewhere see that they have some kind of kinship, sort of somewhere in there. So to me, that's why that scene made sense, because she had seen that she was willing to put herself out and be a jerk, but then left. And it's sort of like, you got out before you became me. I mean, that is what it was supposed to say. Now, would she have done that with her leaving her in the lurch? But at that point, she didn't need her anymore. No, but grudges run deep. The same woman that said, if you don't come to Paris with me, I'll ruin your career in the future, is now going to be nice to her and give her a glowing review in some industry that she's not involved in. It's still New York. It's still, it's a different type of publishing, but it's still different. And the pettiness, the kind of person that could be petty for no reason. Yes, they also have something different in them. And I appreciate that they don't give you Miranda's backstory. They don't say she's like this because she came from a farming community in Iowa and she had to change her name from Millicent McGillicuddy. And, now, she's like, she doesn't ever talk to anyone in her home and she hasn't been back in 30 years. And that's why she is the way she is. They don't do that. They present her fully formed as who she is. And you have to decide
whether or not you're going to grant her any humanity, which I liked, honestly. I thought that was one of the best decisions the movie made, is that rather than try to get you to like Miranda, you like Miranda if you like her, because also as an adult, I get her, but you can get her and not like her. You can get her and think that she's mean. I said to Lynn, it was funny, I noticed a choice that Meryl Streep made, and it may have been in the book, is that she spoke very low. And that to me was, she did that so you had to be listening, and also so she couldn't hear her. And if you didn't hear her, it was easier to miss. She wasn't going to make it easy for you in anything. Like when she first came in, she goes, call to Marchier, we need skirts. And she's like, what skirts? And she wouldn't even tell her. And so she's telling to Emily, and she said, did she say what skirts? And she said she was unclear. Because yes, like Lynn said this morning when I was talking to her on my walk, she said the fact that you'd be so petty that you would be willing to let this girl make herself look stupid in a way that's going to hurt your business, or at least set back your shoot by another hour while you figure out what kind of skirts you need. And a mistake that she makes could impact badly on you. But then again, also, as Lynn said, it wasn't like they were going to blame her. They were just going to blame her assistant. You would just say, oh, that's that girl I fired.
What was that? So she said, what was that thing I had in my hand yesterday? What was that piece of paper I had in my hand yesterday? Like she asked Emily and Andy, that was one of the questions. Can you get this? Call the skirts. What was that piece of paper I had in my hand yesterday? And I had to figure out what the piece of paper was that she had in her hand. And it was like, could you give more?
And they're not going to. They're never going to tell you. You know, I mean, we've all worked for sadistic people. I worked my first job out of college. Well, my first job was working at the mall where Lynn was, but my second newspaper job, without going into personal detail, I'll just say that I had one boss who was woefully unprepared for the job, but she had inherited it. So she was in that position. And she, knowing that she wasn't good at something, would then try to make you look stupid. And then go, well, why didn't you do this? And you would go, you don't know what you're talking about. And I would just go, and I at that point knew I was leaving. By the time she took over, I was leaving. So I was like, but I wouldn't have said it to her face. I never would have said to her, because what if she could have hurt my career in some way? I never would have said, you don't know what you're doing, I'm out. And plenty of people did. Plenty of people were disrespected her to her face and left. And I don't know where they are or whatever happened to them.
That's never going to get you anywhere.
No, I know that none of those people were on the Today Show. And I was, because I couldn't stand her, but I went out of my way to be polite to her because she was my boss. And she was put in a position that she was unprepared for because she had to, and she was trying to do something. And I got that. I completely got that. It didn't excuse her being mean to people. It didn't excuse her trying to embarrass people because she was out of her depth. And that's all that she could offer, was that. Anyway.
But how a boss chooses to behave is not your responsibility. And this can blanket in life or in any way, in any relationship, in any act. You are not responsible for how someone chooses to behave. You're responsible for your reactions, how you react, and how you choose to help someone else or destroy someone else only is a reflection on you.
Yeah.
Reflection on the other person. Change the other person. It's not going to change how that person behaves. It's not going to change how people perceive that person. But how you choose to react, if you choose to degrade that person, if you choose to support that person, if you choose to redeem them from that situation, that is a reflection on you, and everyone, including your boss, is going to see how you behave in those situations, and you are going to be judged on that, not how the boss. Nothing that the supporting employee does is going to change the boss, is going to change your superior, is going to change the person that you do or do not approve of that is above you. But what everyone is going to see, and what your boss will see, and what will continue that growth, and what will make you a better person, is what you choose to do in every one of those situations.
Which is where Andy fails, and I guess we'll leave it there. So we're saying redemption. I love you girls so much. And this is, like I said, this is for those of you who will be watching going, what did we just watch? If you've made it this far, and I hope that you have, this is basically what we're going to be talking about. We would love to have suggestions for movies and TV shows. I got a whole list already, and it could be even reality. Like Lynn and I were talking about doing Top Chef, because there's literally a component called Last Chance Kitchen where you get to come back and redeem yourself and try to get on the show. And what does that mean in reality television? You know, when there was a guy on American Idol this season who they thought would be this great redemption arc, that he had been voted off earlier on the previous season. They bring him back, he gets voted back on the show, and he's terrible.
No, he was a runner-up the previous season.
Yes. And then they bring him back, and then he's terrible. He was not good.
One that I'm watching currently, which is on Hulu, called Younger.
Yeah, girl.
All about this series.
When we come back, you have to be our guest. When we talk about Younger, you have to be our guest, because
I love this show, and talk about redemption and growth. She grows. She does grow. And she's the opposite of Andy's character in that she has extreme respect for her boss.
And she dresses. See, this is the and I know we said we were going to go. Like, oh no, they said we were going to go. But the character in Younger, who basically is a woman in her 40, who passed herself off as in her late 20s so she can get back into publishing. She adapts. She tries to learn the technology, and she tries to learn the lingo, and she befriends younger people. She dates a younger guy. She wears the fashion of a younger person. She doesn't come in and say, I don't know what this is. She says, how do I become this thing that I'm trying to be, that I'm literally pretending to be? And she completely respects the process, and she makes a lot of mistakes, but she completely respects the process. Because she's an older person who understands the stakes.
But we totally stopped talking. We should totally save this for the next thing.
For the next thing, yes. Julie will be back. Thank you guys so much for coming to our show and for listening to our craziness. Whether you're watching this on YouTube or listening to it on, like, I don't know where we're gonna put on this, because I'm not good at technology. So it'll be like a string on some Campbell soup cans. If your Campbell soup can gets the string will transmit the podcast, we will do that. Anyway, thank you guys so much for having us, and we will see you very soon.
You start recording.